welcome to Rising. I'm Amber Athey, and I'm so glad to be back for another Friday show with Jessica Burbank.
Yeah, we've risen again while others maybe have fallen, but it's good to be back with you on a Friday.
I feel very lucky to be here again, given our performance over the past couple of weeks. We have a lot to get to, though. Jessica, what's up first?
Well, Amber, yesterday President Biden suffered a troubling fall at the U.S. Air Force Academy graduation. The 80-year-old commander-in-chief tripped over a sandbag and required assistance getting back up, but walked back to his seat on his own. A White House correspondent, or White House spokesperson rather, confirmed that the president is, quote, fine. He appeared in good spirits when he arrived back at the White House last night, reportedly joking with reporters that he was, quote, sandbagged.
Naturally, former President Trump did not hold back from weighing in on the incident.
He's at the Air Force Academy. He actually fell down. Well, I hope he wasn't hurt. I hope he wasn't hurt. But it's the whole thing is, look, the whole thing is crazy. You got to be careful about that. You got to be careful about that because you don't want that. Even if you have to tiptoe down a ramp, you got to tiptoe.
Trump, of course, is referring to CNN's infamous coverage of his walking down a wet ramp at his own commencement address in 2020. Well, I got to say, Jessica, this was not a good look for President Biden. That sandbag, by the way, is going to be probably waterboarded now for causing this horrible fall. But this is not new for Biden. I mean, he's tripped up the stairs of Air Force One a couple of times. He's not the most spry guy. And I mean, Trump has a point here that the media really freaked out over this idea of him walking down a ramp kind of slowly after he gave a commencement address at West Point. And they turned it into this whole saga about how they needed to invoke the 25th Amendment because his health was failing. Now it's like, okay, well, Biden fell and everything's fine.
Yeah, well, they put him in a baseball cap to make him look all sporty, but it doesn't magically give you the agility. And it's hilarious when he trips and falls and gets back up, he like angrily points to the ground, like I've been betrayed by an object in my path. It's like, yeah, you gotta look where you're walking. Is this a sign of cognitive decline? I don't know. I'm a clumsy person. I trip a lot. I'm not 80 years old. He got back up. He was fine. That's good. But yeah, the media is going to make a meal out of it. It's funny, kind of, when the guy who fell off of his bike falls again. And the way he went about it, just blaming the ground for him tripping over an object. It has some comedic value to it. So I think that's why people are going to make fun of it. But yeah, I don't know if it's going to evoke the same debate we had over Trump when he fell on the ramp. But right. Trump did make some good comments about this one. I thought he took this really well.
Yeah, I was getting shades of when he learned that RBG had passed away, when he repeated the question back to the reporter. Mm-hmm. And during the RBG comment, he went, well, she was an amazing woman. And this time it was, I hope he's okay. Truly incredible comedic value from Trump. I think the fall itself from Biden, by the way, was not necessarily as bad as how long it took him and how many people it took to get him back up on his feet. I think he had 3 people grabbing his arms there and basically lifting him back to his feet, which is not great. That was worse than the fall itself. And I also have some of the headlines from back when Trump walked down this ramp, and they're truly incredible. The New York Times, side by side, when Trump walked down the ramp, said, Trump's halting walk down ramp raises new health questions. The president also appeared to have trouble raising a glass of water to his mouth. And then their same headline for Biden's fall was just Biden falls on stage at Air Force commencement. It's truly incredible. I know CNN had a bunch of medical experts on for hours of coverage as well back in 2020 for Trump, speculating that he had numbness in his feet and nobody was aware of how horrible his health troubles were. So the double standard is pretty hilarious. Clearly, the media, the Democratic Party, and the establishment are trying really hard to eschew this perception that Biden is a frail old guy, which is just a matter of fact.
Yeah, if I had someone in the media reporting on every time I tripped or did something clumsy, they would never have time to report on anything else. Like, I can't stress enough how much empathy I have for public figures under scrutiny for making simple mistakes and falling. And Biden really dove there. Like, there's a calculation you make when you can feel yourself falling where you're like, am I going to catch myself? Am I going to let this happen? And it was pretty clear. He was like, I'm just going down. And he got back up. He was fine. But yeah, there are many other things we could report on, like the debt ceiling and stuff. But this is, not only is it funny to watch when Biden falls, it's important to actually have that conversation. Like, should we have an 80-year-old person serving in the highest public office? Is that too old? Would other people have gotten tripped up by a sandbag? Maybe not. Maybe I'm more clumsy because I'm young and a bit reckless. Maybe this 80-year-old man should have been able to follow his markers a little bit better. And maybe we shouldn't be so worried that there's a chance something could go wrong and he could not be able to serve as president if he does have a simple fall, which is something that's common.
Yeah, exactly. With old people, these falls can be very dangerous. I mean, they are liable to break a hip, pull something in the knee. It's really something that can put them out of commission for quite a period of time. I mean, we saw recently with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, he had a nasty fall while at a fundraising dinner at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, formerly the Trump Hotel in D.C., and he spent weeks or I think even a month recovering from that, and there was speculation that he might even retire. Some of his colleagues were going around holding lunches, trying to shore up support in the case that they had to replace him as a minority leader. Sorry, I said majority leader earlier. But yeah, I mean, that's a huge concern when you have an 80-year-old person, is that the slightest misstep, the slightest fall, the slightest even trip can be a really big deal for their health. And so the larger question, of course, is should we have someone that old occupying the most important seat of power in the entire world, because the slightest misstep can cause them severe harm?
Yeah, it reminds me of Dianne Feinstein's current situation as well. We have to have some standard of how old you're allowed to be when you serve in public office. Or I'm not totally against Nikki Haley's cognitive tests, to be entirely honest. They have to be in a good bill of health. You have to pass certain tests to continue driving, eye tests and things of this nature. We need to have some standard of when someone's allowed to hold public office. Because with someone like Feinstein, when you see Nancy Pelosi's daughter handling her, pushing her around in the wheelchair, that sends the message that we're the party establishment. We have someone who's loyal to us. We don't care really how much she can make decisions on her own, as long as she's going to vote in line with the party. She's useful to us. We're going to do everything we can to keep her in her seat. And she's going to keep getting votes because the party's going to keep funding her campaign in her district. And she's a name that people recognize. That's a sad state of affairs politically. People should care about the cognitive state of the person representing them in the U.S. Congress. But unfortunately, not everyone pays that close of attention. We need some kind of stopgap so that we don't have people like this serving in public office.
Yeah, I think Biden's fall wouldn't have been that big of a deal if it weren't in the larger context of the fact that his campaign was mostly run from his basement. He doesn't usually work a full workday because he calls a lid around 4 p.m. every day. He doesn't hold many events at night. And also, like you mentioned, the larger context of the Democratic establishment keeping people in office who are clearly cognitively deficient because they like the way that they vote, or because they don't like who a governor would potentially replace them with if he were given an appointment. And I also think that this Biden fall might be a little bit of karma, because back when Trump walked down that ramp in 2020 a little bit slowly, Biden actually made fun of him for that. And he said, look at how he steps and look at how I step. Watch how I run up ramps and he stumbles down ramps. Come on. To which I would say, come on, Biden, you basically sealed your fate right there by acting like you were particularly more agile than Trump, who is a heavy man for sure. But if you see him on the golf course, he's a fairly athletic guy still.
Yeah, I think it's a good point that he didn't run a real campaign in 2020. A part of that was because the guy's sleepy. That's a part of it. We also had people at home because of COVID. And so we've never gotten to see what Biden running and tripping and falling, but running for president would actually look like. We don't know. And so for people to say, he's beaten Trump before, we think he can again if Trump is the nominee, which it kind of looks like that's going to be the case for the Republicans. What's going to happen? Is he going to actually be able to keep up with the demands of running for public office, which is a lot of travel, it's a lot of speeches, it's a lot of being on your feet, it's a lot of walking around and avoiding potential objects that might trip you. And so I don't know what it's going to look like. The argument that he's beaten Trump before, he beat Trump under very different circumstances than he's going to have to run against Trump with this time.
I have to imagine that Vice President Kamala Harris is sitting there licking her chops, by the way, every time Biden trips or falls up the stairs of Air Force One, or in this case, fell over a sandbag, apparently. I mean, she's definitely doing like the Mr. Burns watching and waiting with great joy, right? Because she's probably hoping that she'll get her second shot at running for president since her first attempt went so well.
Yeah, it went so well for her. It's sad that all of the candidates from 2020 that ran in the primary, when they dropped out and endorsed Biden, it's very clear to me that the kind of conversation that went down was what was the trade-off for what appointment you were getting in the administration. Buttigieg did not have the experience necessary to be the transportation secretary. I don't think Kamala Harris had the public support that would mean she should be the VP for the candidate. She did not do well in the primary. She just didn't have the base that would justify her being his running mate. And so it's just the political trading that happens, and they're putting candidates at the forefront of the party that actually aren't really even popular with the base of the party. And how has Kamala done as VP? I don't think she's done a great job. Her speeches, she says many words, and they all mean nothing. She's like the queen of platitudes. People need more than that. People watch her speak or listen to her speak, and they hear those words, and they're like, I don't know what she's saying. At least you have some substance coming out of a lot of politicians. Some of it's lip service. Pete Buttigieg is very well spoken, but Kamala Harris just isn't bringing it. And her stepping in for Biden, I think, would be a worse scenario than even Biden running again.
It's pretty incredible that Kamala Harris, despite being seen in public about 20% of the time compared to Joe Biden, still has worse approval rating. So I think that kind of says it all. We're going to have to leave it there, but we'll be back with more Rising after this.